Welcome to a very special video panel about queer comic conversations. Not only is this going to be a queer comic conversation, but it's going to be about a queer comic conversation, which is an online collaboration across continents by these two fabulous artists. Anna Heger is known, among other things, for her creative use of language in comics, namely for introducing gender-neutral pronouns. Anna is a non-binary cartoonist living in Munich. Hi, Anna. Welcome.
Hi.
Sam Orchard is a comic artist from Wellington, New Zealand. Sam is the creator of a long-running webcomic, Rooster Tales, about life as a queer trans man. Hi, Sam. Welcome.
Hello.
In their project Queer Comic Conversations, these two artists meet online, talk, and draw about different aspects of queer life in Munich, in Wellington, and in between. So, Anna and Sam, how did this special collaboration come about? Who goes first?
Shall I go? Shall I answer this?
You should, because you were first in the game.
Cool. So I was approached by Uli, who works at the Goethe-Institut in New Zealand, and she was really interested in working with me and Anna to put together a comic that kind of explores life from a queer perspective and the similarities and differences that we've experienced within our own countries, and to have a kind of partnership between New Zealand and Germany. And from there, we kind of met up with Anna and started chatting and created this wonderful thing.
Yeah, I was like super happy when Ulrike from the Goethe-Institut approached me to work with Sam, because I had been reading his comic for a long time. So I was like, oh my God, yes, I'm going to be in this project.
Great. So you were using a video conferencing tool and meeting online. How does that work practically, to work on the same comic by meeting online across continents?
So I'd been thinking before of doing like a interview type comic with another cartoonist where people draw themselves. So I also wanted to chat with Sam, just getting to know him and exchange ideas. So I asked him if he would be up to doing an actual collaboration, like where we work in the same and on the same pages and the same panels, and he was like excited to do that, and that's how we started to find a concept, like how would we do that in this case, like how could that be us working together without actually me watching him draw and waiting until it's my turn to draw.
Yeah, and I think because we kind of discussed different ways that we might do it. Maybe we knew that each month we'd have a different installment from July to December, and we thought, oh, maybe we'll do one page each that kind of talks to the same theme, or maybe we do it much more collaboratively like that. And that's when we kind of settled on that collaboration. And we did it all digitally, which is quite new for me. Most of my comics I draw using paper and then color them in digitally, but this one we did it all together so we could share the file and move our characters around. And we chose different colors to represent the different bits that we've drawn. And so my color is green, and so you can see the bits in the comic that I've drawn which have that kind of green tinge, and Anna's is magenta color. Yeah.
So we chose complementary colors for each other, but then there was like lots of resonance with when we started talking and our experiences. So that was like big fun to like have that opposite ends of the globe, but then still similar experiences.
Yeah, it was really interesting coming up with the different themes for the month for each installment that we just found, like, as soon as we started chatting, we were like, what about this? Oh yeah, and this and this and this. And we had so much in common that we wanted to talk about.
So let's read the first installment of Queer Comic Conversations, July Pride Parade. Everyone's reading their own personas, and I'll do the descriptions. Here we go.
Hello, I'm Sam. Are you Anna?
That's me. And you look just like in your webcomic.
Shall we chat?
Yes, let's have queer comic conversations.
Where shall we draw our settings? We could be anywhere.
It's July. Let's go to the Pride Parade in front of Town Hall in Munich.
Visual of flags and people at Rathaus Marienplatz.
Wow, so many people.
Is this more people than you get at Pride in Wellington?
Let's go back to February. That's when our Pride is, and I'll show you.
Wellington Waterfront, Pride Parade, lots of diverse flags and people. The flags read slogans like Indigenous genders are real, trans rights now, intersex care, healthcare, sisters not just sisters, queer rights, rainbow rights are human rights.
This is the smaller parade. It is focused on community and change. There is a bigger one that has the police and lots of corporations. We're still figuring out what Pride means to us. That's why we have two parades.
Back in Munich, Pride Parade. Diverse signs and flags can be seen reading LGBTQIA, Beyond Color.
Hey Sam, so where do you fit under the rainbow umbrella?
I sometimes joke that LGBTQIA is a checklist. I've identified as lesbian, bi, gay, and trans, but now I just use queer and trans.
Yes, the first 5 letters fit me. I'm non-binary trans. I'm attracted to my own gender and other genders, you know, bisexual and queer.
I'm into all kinds of people, but whatever their gender, my attraction is queer.
I feel lesbian with women and gay with men, full-time homo and queer.
Labels are so complicated. Let's talk about that next month.
Oh, great. See you then.
Thank you very
The
much.
Fun. All the other installments, they kind of draw from what time of the year is it? Like, what date is important? What are we thinking about right now?
That's very neat. So how does it work? Can you actually work at the same time on the same panel? That's probably quite difficult.
You wouldn't want to do that, but like at the beginning, we had for each page to be drawn, Sam had his page and I had my own page, and I could only write to my page, but I could draw data from his page when he uploaded. So we had actually one copy on Dropbox, and then we would work with our own copies on our machines, and then just draw. I think it's like programming. So yeah.
But there was a lot of kind of taking Anna's character and then dropping it into my file and kind of moving things around. And we discovered that each person would kind of be in charge of each issue and kind of broke it up to 3 issues for each. And so each person that was in charge of that particular issue took the other person to a place in their hometown. So in August, I take Anna to a gay bar in Wellington, and in the next issue, Anna takes me somewhere.
Yeah.
I see.
And you can see that in the colors. So it makes it also easier to draw and more authentic. If I would have to Google search streets in Wellington, that would be like a lot of work, and I wouldn't do it right. But since we're only drawing what we know, it's actually quite nice. And it had the feeling of, oh my God, this is like cool. Wow. Like it felt like Sam took me places. So
yeah, it
I
was
love
really
that.
amazing when you see the files get updated and loaded, and it's like, oh, this is what it is. We're going for a picnic, and what does it look like? And it was quite magical to see, particularly like in the time of we were doing this comic, we were both in lockdown, so we were both stuck at home in our apartments. So to be able to kind of travel magically via comics was quite exciting.
Does it mean you had to have a lot of trust in each other as well?
Yeah, that just grew. That made like this idea of working so closely together was actually risky. Like it could have messed up the whole project. But yeah, it didn't.
Yeah, I think we worked really well together and kept each other up to date throughout the project as we, did our kind of storyboarding and did the draft comics, so we could kind of get a feel for what the other one was doing. But also we kind of tried to adapt to each other's style, and yeah, I think it could have gone terribly wrong. I agree, but it just worked really well. I think we had a good time.
Yeah, and also I at the beginning I took the images that Sam had provided of his avatar. I took it and deconstructed it and decided how I can look similar but different. So I actually I learned from his style there. And he decided to work with the same software I had been working for 6 months already. So he had a steep learning curve for using a new software.
So Sam and Anna, is this comic that you're developing month by month, is this actually a comic from within the crisis? Or would you have done it this way anyway? Because, I mean, this is the way to produce a comic right now perfectly.
It's actually crisis resistant, like the way we worked. And Markus, I guess you know, because I did this other comic about how close Sam and Uli feel, even though they are like really, really, really far away. But it wouldn't have mattered if they were like next door, because at some point I wasn't meeting people besides 2 people that were my close family unit.
Yeah, I think we were quite lucky that the project started before, or the kind of start of the conversations happened before anything went into lockdown in New Zealand. And it just so happened that the project happened while we were both in lockdown, and the way that we worked just kind of, like Anna said, was resistant to the COVID crisis, and actually provided a really nice opportunity to travel in our imaginations to a kind of time and space to get out of my small lonely apartment, which was lovely actually.
Yeah, I also took Sam to the last concert I attended. That was like before the lockdown, but yeah.
Yeah, and to be able to go to Pride where that's really not happening this year in the same way. Like, I think New Zealand is one of the few countries that actually did have a Pride festival and parade.
Yeah, in February, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Another artist that I know said a few weeks ago that during the crisis, all of a sudden, everyone is leading a comic, is living a comic artist's life. Is that something you're seeing too?
It's the question is what is a comic artist's life? If it's like, oh, I love to be in this one room, not interacting with people and being closed off from everybody, then maybe yes. but then also all the comic meetups that I would have had, they didn't happen. And there's only so many Zoom calls and Yitsies you can do. Like at the beginning, I was maybe interacting also to work online, but then working with Sam kind of like was already kind of enough. There's only so much time you can spend doing that. It takes a lot of concentration to keep on working like that.
I find community online quite often in terms of queer comic artists and queer stories and things like that. So the internet has always felt like a place for me to find that sort of sense of community. And so not only has the crisis kind of highlighted what life might be like for introverted comic artists, but I think also what life might be like for introverted queer comic artists in particular.
I see.
And that's also like a thing we noticed that Sam and me, like 10 years ago, we were reading the same online comics by
Yes.
American creators. Like we're actually quite close together because we're both on the trans spectrum. That also plays into it. So yeah, if you're in that kind of niche, you're already more online because and Sam was one of the people that inspired me to do comics myself, because I saw, I can just do that. I can share my insights, my queer ideas and everything with people through comics.
I think the internet has really provided a space for queer and trans artists to share their stories. And I know for me personally, like it's much easier for me because I like to draw, that creating comics to tell stories was a natural default, as compared to kind of film or television, which costs heaps more money and needs a lot more resourcing and things like that. But being able to just sit and draw out my feelings and put them up on the internet and other people read them, it feels like the internet has provided a space for queer and trans people to tell their stories for a long time now.
Yeah, one thing that's particularly important on the trans spectrum, and one thing that I guess both of you are very aware of, is language, is something like gender neutral, inclusive language. Now, the German language is kind of difficult. Nonetheless, Anna, you managed to invent a few pronouns. In English, I guess it's a lot easier to use they, for example.
When I started out like creating pronouns like 10 years ago, I was like, oh yeah, this is like super easy. This is like a half an hour thing. We just need 3 words. But then no, in German grammar, you don't need 3 words. You need like 28. And this still doesn't cover adjectives and nouns. It was just pronouns.
Finally, you invented pronouns like Xier, like Xier, for example. Is that something you're going to use in the German language publication of your current collaborative work?
I think it's used because we discuss it. It's actually like a thing we do. I don't know which month actually, but yeah, we talk
August.
about that. My pronouns, like the Xier pronoun and also the they pronoun, they are sometimes used by trans people. But a lot of people on the trans spectrum are actually using he and she pronouns. So also this is something the person in question should decide. Like it's in Xier, it's not a trans pronoun per se. It's like a pronoun that could be helpful for non-binary people, and that could be used to talk about everybody when you don't know the gender. Like they also is used like that in English.
How about you, Sam? How are you usually dealing with pronouns in your comics?
I usually, so I use he or they for me, and most people, because of my beard, will just default to he, and that feels fine. My comics are autobiographical and a lot of them feature my ex-partner who uses they, them pronouns. And again, a lot of it is just us two talking with each other, so we don't have those pronouns. But occasionally, we're interacting with other people, and so I'm able to demonstrate a really easy use of they, them pronouns. But in terms of daily life, my default is to use they and them for anyone, and then once they tell me what their preferred pronouns are at any given point, because I think the other thing is that we might use pronouns in some situations and they're too dangerous or not appropriate to use in other ones as well. So I've gotten quite good at just adapting pronouns based on people's preferences, and I think that's respectful, and it takes a bit of work to get your brain prepared to make those shifts around, but once you do, it's pretty easy.
Yeah. So to see both of you interacting in these comics, we can follow it on a monthly basis. Maybe we can share the link here as well. Now, what's next? I understand, Sam, that you are working on a graphic novel, and Anna is working on a book with autobiographical short stories. Is there anything you can already give away what your next projects are going to be like?
Yeah, I'm working on a book at the moment, adapting a young adult fiction novel that was written by Ryan Kennedy, and it was written about 10 years ago, and we're updating it to a graphic novel and kind of updating some of the language because things have changed quite a lot in terms of trans narratives in the last 10 years. But that's a really fun, kind of loud comic about a kid who's in an all-girl punk band and then realizing he's not actually a girl and making transition. And it's a kind of fun, happy story about the joys and excitement of transitioning.
Yeah, I'm working on a comic book of short stories, and they take the reader to different years in my life, and they're basically about cruising and checking out people and flirting. So it's like mostly those stories, because there were some experience I always wanted to share, and I finally got to do that.
Sounds very exciting. Thanks to both of you for sharing this. But for now, of course, we are looking forward to reading your work of collaboration, which is due to come out as a book as well.
Yeah, it will. Like the plan is to print it. Like the Goethe-Institut Wellington wants to print the book, but I think we're going to do that beginning of next year, end of this year, depending on the budget and how things turn out. Something like in Corona, you don't know how things go.
But for now, you can read it online at the website, and there should be a new installment each month until December. And the other thing I wanted to add about it is that if you can read the comic, and we have lots of kind of visual cues to different things, and underneath there's a whole lot of links, so that if you're interested in some of the content that we discuss, you can go and read more about each thing. So there's kind of heaps of interesting leads to follow after you read the comic, I think.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
And I think there's a German version and an English version. How are you going to deal with this in a book to come?
We'll figure something out. That's what we're discussing at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think both versions will be in the same book.
Yeah.
I see. All right. Thanks very much for your insights. And yeah, we're looking forward to see and read much more of what came out of your collaboration, which is probably the way to work in these times.
It is.
Yes.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
All the best.